Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and everything in between. I'm Zen and this is video number 9 of the form series, if you can believe it. In the previous video we started off with our form like this and we got it to this stage here, and so our next step is to finish it off by sorting out these radio buttons and checkbox so they look like this here. So we've got another complete redesign of the radio button to do and just a minor change to the checkbox. So let's get into it. Okay, so like we said in the intro, we've already come quite a long way and we're on the last part of this for our website. Making these new style radio buttons was actually fairly easy. However, it was the thought process which I found a lot more difficult, since I was so stuck in the system that I made for these radio buttons and checkbox that I kept trying to keep that same format to create these radio buttons and realised that actually it's a lot easier than that. But as we said, let's get into the code. So as usual, the first thing we've got to do is open up Visual Studio Code and open up our form. And here it is here. We've still got Cherry Blossom open. So it's this Reg Flowers that we will do. And as I say, the thing that we're looking at now is looking at, we'll get there eventually, here we go, at these radio buttons, because I was trying very hard to keep to the same sort of layout and format without really asking myself, was it the best layout? And it wasn't. So I fixed it and it works. So let's see what we need to do. In truth, we could really get rid of the radio group and check group. We won't, simply because it allows us to do the positioning of our text a lot easier. But that's the only real reason why we're keeping the radio group element in there. We actually no longer need our fake radio. It's no longer needed, and we can do this to all three of them. So let's just quickly get rid of those. We won't be using the fake radio element at all. What we will be doing, however, is adding some text formatting on our text, and in that we're actually going to add the paragraph tag. Okay, so we're just going to sweep this around it. And this is an important thing to do, to be honest, in almost any HTML page when you've got text, is to really use paragraph rules around them. There's very few times when you don't need to. And it wasn't until I added the paragraph tags over my text that everything became really simple. Okay, so here we come down to the second radio group, and what we need to do again is to put in the paragraph tag, but we also need to put in a new line rule. And so that, and we're actually going to change this text as well, because text was a bit too long. So we're going to change this to site marketing, and then we're going to put in a BR for a new line, and then emails only. And this isn't even the world's greatest text that you could be using. There's definitely are better descriptive terms that we could use, but and then for this one down here, once again we're going to put in the paragraph tag, and then we're going to say site and partnership, new line, site, emails. Okay, and we save that, and then we have a look at what that has done. And yeah, not quite what we want so far. And you can go away. Not really what we want at the moment, but that's okay. It's not a problem. The important thing to remember is that it's the label which is attached to the checkbox, okay, or in this case the radio button. And so because we've got this 4 bit here which links to that ID, when this label is clicked, the radio button, even though it's invisible, is then checked. Okay, and that is the trick here. We're going to make the label itself the button. Okay, and that's the trick here. The label becomes the button. It still sits within the radio group and all that stuff, but that is basically the trick. So now we've done that, it's time to go to the CSS and see what we can do to make it all work. Okay, and because we were good in our previous videos where we started to separate our radio buttons apart, okay, so our radio buttons are now all in one place and our checkboxes are all in one place. It means that we can now format these two things completely differently, and as you can see in this example, we really need that to be the case. I will try my best to have these side by side as we've done before. Okay, so what we're looking at first is try and get these all next to each other, and this is where again the radio group comes in, because we can just tell them to float to the left. There probably are other ways of doing it, display inline block, things like that, but it doesn't always work out correctly. So we save that and nothing really happened. For some reason my checkbox jumps up, but don't worry about that, we'll sort him out later. And then what we're also going to do is to add in some margins. So we'll go margin 0 along the top, 0.5 rem to the right, so there will be spaces once they start to behave themselves. We're going to give them 2 rem space below, okay, so this will help to force the checkbox when that behaves to jump down a bit, and then 0 to the left, so that there's no left hand margin. It'll be all done with the 0.5 to the right. Again, when we save that, we see these move down a little bit, but not really doing what we want at the moment, but don't worry about it. It will all do what it needs to in a bit. Like I said, it is the label where a lot of the work is done. So the first thing we're going to do with our label is to get that to be displayed inline block. And again, we'll save it. There probably won't be much difference at the moment, okay, because of the, not it won't. We've got, let's have a look, font size. Now I want the text to be a bit smaller, simply because we don't want it too big. So dropping it by 10% will help us there, but we're going to offset that by making the font bold. So font weight is going to be bold, and because we want it to have the same sort of font as the placeholder text, we are going to give it a font family of Arial. Okay, and here we can see it's starting to take the same shape as that, but we can see that the color perhaps isn't right. So let's fix the color. Shame we can't spell it in English, but there we go. So the color will be RGBA, and if you haven't worked it out already, it's going to be like 120, 120, 120 with a transparency or an opacity of 1. Okay, so now it matches the same color. And what we're going to do now is to give it a border so we can actually see what's going on. And our border is going to be 3 pixels to again match the input fields. It's going to be solid, and once again we're going to use the same color, RGB 120, 120, whoops, 120, 120, and 120. And we'll save that there, and now we can start to see what's going on, and we can see that somewhere it's taken up the entire space. So then, well, what is it? Because surely I've set things correctly. Have I not? Let's have a look. One way we can do this is by pressing F12, and what we can do is navigate through this. So we're going into the postcard, into the form, and then we want to come down to the radio groups and click on it here. And we see that we've got a width of 512. So what is setting that? We can see it's not from a radio group, There's no rules there. Okay, so let's go into it. Let's go into radio. You see radio set at 13 by 13, so we know it's not the radio. What about the label? And here we have reg label radio, still set at 550 pixels. Okay, and this is what's caused them to jump all down to the different lines. So if we just knock this back, let's change this width, and I already know the correct one, so we won't mess about too much. We'll change it to 165. Save that. Suddenly, this is looking better. It's not looking perfect. Couple of issues. These ones out of using the text on two sides, using the text on two lines, are fatter. Okay, they've got a greater height than the one on single one, and we've got this big sort of padding. It looks like it's a padding on the left hand side. You know, it says 2.5 RAM there. In fact, if I'd gone and looked at the code, it would have told us, where is it? So we've got text line left, but we have padding left 2.5 RAM. So you can see we've got that to sort out, and we've got to come up with a way of trying to keep these buttons the same size, as well as having them centered aligned. So how do we do that? Let's have a look. Well, one of the first things we can do is to get rid of that padding left. And instead we'll put a padding, because we don't want the text to reach all the edge. So we'll actually keep padding, but put it down to 0.5 of a RAM. We'll save that, and straight away we can see that that has helped a lot. Okay, this one looks like it is already aligned in the center. These do not. So what we'll do is just do a text align off center, and that does look a lot better. Even that shifted a little bit, and again we can see it's nicely centered, but again we've got different height. So let's fix that. See here, we don't have a rule for height, so let's put that in. Let's put in a height of 50 pixels. Now, although that has worked, they're now all the same size. Our text for the multi-line ones now don't look very good. We've got too much of a space along the top, and this is part of built-in padding and margins of certain elements. There is a nice fix for this, and one of the reasons why we used the paragraphs. Okay, it's a paragraph here that does that trick. So what we're going to do here is .reg _ label _ radio space p. Okay, because it's a child element of the radio. Now, yes, if I'm doing BEM method properly, shouldn't be doing that. I should have given each paragraph a class, but sue me. Anyway, so margin 0, padding 0. This is just a sort of resetter, just to be safe. Here is the important bit. Line height at 1.5. This is a sort of the difference between the two lines, obviously. Then we're also going to tell it to display inline block. Okay, so it acts as a block, and then the final bit of the magic is vertical align is middle. When we do that, look at that. Oh, now our marketing email has actually jumped up, and you know, you have to say, well, which is worse, having these ones here too far down, or having that one a bit too far up? And I would say that it's probably best having it the way it is right now. If we look at our master one, it is in the middle though, so we must be able to do something to change that, and that is probably because we've done this vertical line middle in our paragraph. We didn't do it in here, which made 0 difference. Why won't you go in the middle? It would make a difference, except for I missed out line height as well. I will do, there we go. I'll do some more information on line heights and stuff like this when we start looking at fonts properly. There's going to be a couple of videos on fonts. The first one about how to get fonts and how to reference them, and then another one will be used on sort of like these little tricks. So the trick here is that the line height and height must be the same, and the vertical line must also be middle. If you're using multiple lines, it's always good just to reset those to be safe. This just makes the distancing nice, and again these two help to fit it into the middle. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is to update the margins a bit, and let's see, we've got top and right are 0 and 0. You could probably have all the margins at 0, I think. And when we do that, there we go. See, there's those little margin changes which will keep them apart. Don't forget, we already had margins being applied elsewhere, okay, which is here in the radio group. So the radio group was what was creating these little spaces between them, and you know, with just a little bit difference of 0.5 of a rem. So there's no need for our labels to have an additional margin because it was already been done by the radio group. And you can see, and we'll forget about this for the moment, don't worry about him, but you can see we've already got these exactly where we want them to be. And the only thing that's really left for us to do is to make it so we can see which one is active. And as you saw, we did that by using colors. So let's do it. So how do we do it? And that is the question. It's not that hard at all. See, we already know we've got the radio. Okay, now remember the relationship. It is the radio button itself that must be checked. When we click on the text or on the label, it checks the box, but it's that status that we're checking for. So what we will do is that. Now I shall do it underneath here. It's one of these weird ones because it's like, well, where should I put the rule? Because it's, you know, should it really? In fact, it should be here. Okay, because it's a state of the label. The P is a child, so that should come afterwards. So we go for dot reg double underscore radio, so it's a radio itself. However, we're looking at a pseudo state, which is checked. And then when it is checked, we're looking for its direct sibling, which is the label. And then we're going to change the border color to an RGBA of 50. No, there we go, 50, 200, 50, and a alpha channel of 1. And we'll save that, and straight away we can see that's been affected. And we can also do the same to the text itself. And in fact, we can cheat quite well here. We just copy that part down to color, paste that, save that, and there we go. So now it should work. Now we're noticing here it's not working on the others. So the question is why? That one there. And here we have an unusual situation. Okay, the code for the radio buttons I'm pretty sure are correct. However, our checkbox, because of it's moved up here, is causing interference with our radio buttons. Because it was in the HTML, as we can see here, it is written afterwards. In the said index order of things, it is above the elements before it, which are these here. And because it's been positioned up here with the text here, it's taken up that entire area, and therefore when we click on it, it's actually going to be registering on the checkbox rather than on the radios. So we have to work out why this is the case. So we're going to have a look at the code. So we want to have a look at the checkbox. and I think it's to do with this here. Okay, we've got a relative position. Now, if you remember about relative positioning, it says, based on where I should be, reserve that space for me and then move me to wherever I am. Because there's no actual other positioning information going on for our checkbox, at least at the moment, it's decided it should be there, and we've got the text down here due to the labels, and so it spread itself right across. And actually, if we just add a simple display of inline block, I think, yes, you see how that moves down straight away, and hopefully, look at that. Oops. Yep, these are now working. And again, we go and look over the checkbox. Where is it? Here's check group there. We can now see straight away that it has moved down, and that is the only space it's taken up. So this is a problem, you know, quite often it can be very hard for people to work out if you're not actually checking it using the developer tools in your browser, because that would have been almost impossible to find otherwise. Okay. Now, people might say, well, why don't we put these in red at the moment? And that is totally valid, and that is something I'm probably going to do in one of the later videos, because I'm going to start doing some form validation work on this. And so, you know, green and red are our common ones, so I shall leave that to them. But at the moment, we wanted a way of being able to identify which one is valid, which one has been chosen. And just like a normal radio button, you can only choose one. Okay, so the code for making this was actually quite straightforward. What's also nice about this in the idea of a responsive design is a couple of things. First of all, this whole form, at least at the moment, could change quite nicely. You know, it could react to different widths. You can see we've got quite a bit of space in this side of the form, and these radio buttons can easily go vertically, and so we won't have to worry until we've lost this space and this space here. But then we could also deal with shrinking the background image, and again, perhaps we would do this properly, where we would shrink the image at the same time, so we could actually probably have double this distance, so this plus the same on this side, before we'd need to even worry too much about playing about with the form to make it work in a responsive design. So that's quite good. And so the final thing to do is to look at our radio button, sorry, our checkbox, and we just want to check that nothing is in its way. No, you see the register button is safe down there, that's it there. Now there seems to be a slight error on here. I'm not see, when I click in here, there seems to be some interference between this and this one here. I'm not quite sure what that is, and there is no direct. I mean, I might have done something wrong in the code. Let's have a quick look. So let's see, the radio group is closed off correctly. Just opening up that last one just to make sure. So radio group input, that's closed. Label is closed. I spelled that correctly. Closing of the div, which is the radio group. So it just must be something minor. Maybe it's in the, you know, the changes in the CSS. We'll go and have a look at that now and work out why this isn't working. Okay, so the issue, I hope, is very simple. I'm looking at this rule here, and I notice that this is still reg label radio. Now, if you remember in the last video, or the one before that, we actually changed the reg label from radio to check so that they were completely different. It seems like I made a boo-boo and I didn't change it here. So if I change that from radio to check and then save it and then have a look at the form again, is it down? Oops, there we go, it is showing up. So that's now working, And the only thing we need to do is to change its color. And that is really simple because that is in this after system here. And we want that green color, which we're going to steal from up here. I think it's at 200. Yep. We're just going to change. It's going to be background color. So we'll just take the color code from there. And we'll come back down to checkbox, after, background color. And we're just going to change it there. We save that, bring the form back up. And there we have it. Okay, now, the thing I would do at this point is to delete stuff that we don't need. So for example, in our radio button, there is no after. There is no fake, there is no after, so we can get rid of that. This is fake radio after, we don't need that. Fake radio, we don't need that. Let's just get rid of some of those lines that we don't need. We need radio P, yep. We need radio, radio group. All right, because there's no point at all a lot of time having redundant code that you're not going to use. Sometimes having the label code might be useful. Okay, I did make a point saying that we might need this later on, which is why I've kept that in here. The only reason why I kept this in here is because I'm going to be showing you a trick later on with the, with adding labels back in and making a nicer sort, effect. So that's staying in there, but that's the only reason. However, once you delete it, always check it. So we bring it back up. Again, we see we're in Reg Flowers, and this is still working, and that is working perfectly. Okay, all these are fine. Really, we're at a point where this form is now complete. Yes, we can compare it to the master if you like, and there are going to be some minor changes. You can see how these text boxes are moving, how there's obviously a bit more space on these, and they're a bit off to the side and stuff like that. That's all minor stuff that if you really want to deal with, you can do. But there we go. That is it. We have got a half decent form. That is basically the end of this video. Obviously there are more to come, more in forms, more on everything else, but that is the end of this one. As always, I hope it's been useful. Please like, subscribe, comment and all that jazz. Do talk to me. I've made more videos than I have subscribers and everything else at the moment, and that's fine. I just want it to be useful for you guys, so please let me know how I can improve this. This is Anne, signing out.